everybody, Susan here with Pumpkin Hill Stampers. I have Stampin' Show and Tell for you today. We are doing the Joy of Sets blog hop, and this month's theme for June is Splish Splash. So I decided to do a water themed card, and to stick with that water theme idea, we're also doing a watercolor technique. So I hope you enjoy. I'm going to show you how I put this sample together. The one I do on the video might be a little bit different because I have some couple of other ideas I want to try out, so we'll see how it goes. But this is the basic idea of the card we're going to make. So here we go. So I have shimmer white paper, okay, and I've cut it down so that I can back it with Pacific Point. So it's just going to get mounted on there when we're done doing our watercoloring on it. And then I've already die cut 2 circles, okay, to have this sailboat image on there. So that sailboat comes from the set Simply Summer. It's long retired. It's got the bike and the lemonade and the flowers and the sailboat. So I've had this a long time, but with Joy of Sets, that's what it's all about. It's about using our favorite sets. So let's get started. So something I'm going to do different. Here's the watercolor technique. So I'm going to take my markers. Now I happen to have So Saffron and Daffodil Delight here, and I have my die cut. So I'm going to put my die cut under my block so that I know that I'm applying enough ink to cover it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with So Saffron, and I'm just applying ink to my block. Okay? And then from there, I'm going to add some of our Daffodil Delight right over the top. Great. So now I have ink on my block. Now I'm going to take my spritzer. It's just got water in it, and I'm going to spritz that block. And what it's going to make it do is it's going to make that ink on there kind of pool and move around a little bit. And I can even tip it to help kind of mix the colors if I want. So then I flip it over, and I'm going to stamp it right down on that cardstock. So I'm basically coloring the cardstock at this point. Okay, and it just takes a second to absorb into that cardstock. I'm going to pull that off, and if you got it pooling on there, you can just kind of move it around, or you can take your aqua painter at that point and you can just kind of paint it to smooth it out a little, or you can just let it dry. So it's kind of gets a fun technique. Okay, so now you can see how that paper kind of curls up a little bit. So I'm going to just blot off this block, and I'm going to put that over there, and I'm going to put the dry side down on top. So that's just going to kind of help flatten it out a little bit. Now we're going to do the same technique, only we're going to do the front of our card. So I don't want stuff on the inside, so I'm going to flip this over. So this is my card base, and this is going to be the front of my card. Okay, so this time I have a rectangular block, so it's going to stretch across my card. And I'm going to go ahead and do, I'll do the yellow first again. So what I'm going to do, just like I just did, is I'm going to apply ink. Now this time I want to make sure I get right to the edges. If you know you're going to do the whole block for this technique, you'd also use your ink pad and just press it to the block, but you're going to get a lot more ink that way, so be ready to have more color. And then I'm going to add some of this second Daffodil Delight. Again, I'm going to spritz it. Okay. Let it pool a little bit, so now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm shooting for the top of my card here. Okay, I'm going to kind of sun wash the top of my image. Pull that off. Then again, just going to quickly brush over it, smooth out any puddles I might have on there. Okay, now I have a little bit of ink left on here, but I'm going to go ahead and add more, because I want that to come down a little bit further. So I'm just going to add more color direct to that block. And I'm actually going to chamois off kind of the bottom part because I don't want it everywhere because I want to do a second color on there. I'm gonna spritz again. Now, when you use this technique, you're gonna end up with different results every time. Okay, so I'm just kind of moving that around. So I want to come a little bit lower on my card with the yellow. And then I'm just going to wash that across. So we're just adding like a watercolor wash to the back of our card, but we're using our block and our ink to do it. Okay, so I'm brushing that off. Now I'm going to do the water. So for the water, I am using 3 blues. I've got Coastal Cabana, Bermuda Bay, and Pacific Point. So again, I'm going to move that up. I'm going to start with my lightest color, and again I'm going to have it go all the way across my block. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint the whole block with the lightest color. I always go lightest to darkest. That way when I'm applying a darker ink, I'm not going to pick up ink on a lighter color brush. Now you're going to notice this stamp has kind of this wave in it, so I'm going to repeat that as I apply these darker colors. So kind of in a mimicking effect, I'm doing zigzag on there. And I'm not going to worry about matching them up directly, but I'm just adding the zigzag with those 2 colors. Okay, so now once again, I spritz. Now, the wetter you get it, the more it's going to run, but sometimes that's the effect we want. So now, I'm going to let that pool up a little bit. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to stamp it right down on my card. Now, I did use my grid paper to kind of line up my paper and line up my stamp because I want a horizon line on my card. So let's hope we got pretty straight across. That's pretty good. Okay, so it's a little pooled at the bottom. I'm just going to brush that off just a little bit. Just blot out my blender so that's clean before I pick it up to use it again. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these extra blocks on my table. Alright, so pull all this out of here. Get rid of the mess. So there's my yellow one, right? That's going to be my main image, and that's pretty flat now that I've pressed it underneath the block. So I'm going to do the same thing with this base while we're working. I'm just going to take a clear block, clean clear block, and just put that right over the top, so that'll press that down too. So hopefully it'll keep it from lifting too much. Alright, so now while we've got this, I've got my stamp of my sailboat, and I'm going to use StazOn. Now my paper should be fairly dry at this point. So if you wanted to use Memento instead, you're probably safe. But I'm going to use StazOn, and that's because StazOn is better for watercolor. Memento is better for alcohol ink. So I'm going to ink this up. Hopefully I get a nice clean print on it. And I'm going to stamp this right here in the center. Let's hope for good placement. One of the challenges of wood block sets, right? Placement. So I'm just going to press that down, I'm going to hold it for a sec, because I want that really to come out nice and bold. Pretty good. Okay. So there's my sailboat. So now, why did I stamp it in StazOn? Because I want to watercolor that boat. So this time I'm going to take my Pacific Point and open my lid, and I'm just going to use my aqua painter to add some water in there. And I'm going to try to paint this boat. I decided after I made the first one that I'm showing you there, I kind of wanted more of a muted color here. So I thought, well, let's see if we can't watercolor on the watercolor, and I think we'll be able to do it. So I could be happy with that. Yes, I could. And I want my color of my water a little different, so I'm going to use my Bermuda Bay. I don't have the ink pad. But if I just scribble some Bermuda Bay over here on my clear block, and I add a little drop of water to that, I get the same effect as if I'm using the inside of my case. And so this is just coming down here. Now you can see my water is, my color is kind of bleeding a little bit, and that's because my cardstock is still wet from the yellow. But being a watercolor technique, I don't really mind. So So that has to dry now. Just clean out that brush. So, a lot of watercolor in here, but that's okay. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do, maybe I need to blot that. Okay, so if you find it's too much and it's running, flip it over on a clean piece of cardstock and just blot it. Okay, there, I can live with that. Okay, so let's see how our card base is doing. Looks pretty flat. Probably when I'm done putting it all together, I'll probably put it under a block to completely dry. But there's that. So I'm borrowing from, I think it's called Thoughtful Branches. Yeah, Thoughtful Branches, another retired set, but it's got this great You're in My Thoughts stamp, and I like how big it is. So I'm going to use my Pacific Point, and I'm going to stamp it over here, kind of along the horizon, so kind of half in the yellow, half in the blue. Just like so. Now I'm going to snail this part of the card to the Pacific Point backer. Just framing it with that bright blue. I'm going to flip it over on a dry section, clean section, press that so it adheres to the adhesive. And then I've got this one, I'm going to add that with dimensionals. Sometimes when paper is been watercolored, it takes a little extra adhesive to get it to bond. So I'm just going to put 5 dimensionals on there. So I'll flip this over. Now I'm going to put this on my card. And I want the boat to be at about horizon level. So there's our card. So Splish, Splash for Joy of Sets. So, and I think after that dries, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add a little more of the Pacific blue to that boat and really make it pop. So I will have that in the photo below, because by the time I post the video, it's be dry and I'll have done that. So you can see the difference between the video and the final product. So this one I did with all markers on the water and in the boat, and you can see how much more dramatic that is. This one is the watercolor effect. So play with your inks, play with your papers, have fun, and join us at Joy of Sets and share your love of stamping. So we'd love to see you. Alright everybody, I'll see you next month for the next blog hop. Have a great day.